Welcome to Food for Thought, providing real-world inspiration to live compassionately, sustainably, and healthfully for humankind, animal kind, and the ecosystems we all depend on. Thanks for listening. If you're new, thanks for listening. If you've been listening for years, anywhere in between the start of this podcast, 18 years ago, and today, today's episode is a story of an oak tree and what it taught me about resilience. My name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. You can find me at joyfulvegan.com. You can also get my new book, A Year of Compassion, 52 Weeks of Living Zero Waste, Plant-Based, and Cruelty-Free from wherever you buy books. You can also get signed copies through my website. I am working with the most wonderful bookstore, Mrs. Dalloway's in Berkeley, California. I sign books, they fulfill them. It has been the most delightful partnership. I had my launch party there and they've been amazing. But you can order from wherever you like. At joyfulvegan.com, you can find a link to my page where I have all of the links to large retailers, independent stores, Mrs. Dalloway's, all the things. So thanks so much to everybody who pre-ordered the book, who ordered the book, who will order the book, and for who's gifting the book. Someone who has been buying my books for many years. He used to come to my cooking classes and not stay for the class, but just come to buy piles of books because he just gifts them to people. He just bought 65 copies of A Year of Compassion from Mrs. Dalloway's. So in a couple days, I will be heading back to Mrs. Dalloway's to not just sign them, but to personalize them. I'm so grateful, and I just really hope it has the impact that I desire, which is to create a more compassionate world. I also really encourage you to go to joyfulvegan.com where you can find my Substack. And thanks to all of you who've become paid subscribers. We're moving over from Patreon. It has been such a thrill to be on Substack, but you can listen to the last episode I did talking all about why I need you to go over there and why I'm so happy to be there. Today, I want to tell you a story about resilience and renewal. Before this part of Oakland that I live in was developed, it was an oak woodland. There's a reason Oakland is called such. And it was part of the ancestral homeland of the Ohlone people who lived here for thousands of years. The landscape was dominated by native oaks, specifically coast live oaks, and shaped by seasonal creeks, which supported wildlife and provided resources for daily life. One of those creeks, known as Indian Gulch Creek, still exists, though it now runs underground. The landscape was a mosaic of towering oaks and this meandering creek, providing sustenance and shelter to both humans and wildlife. In the late 19th century, Jane Sather permitted the land to be used as a public park known as Sather Park. To facilitate access to this park, Francis Marion Borax Smith's Oakland Traction Company constructed a large wooden trestle bridge around 1893, extending a trolley line from downtown Oakland through Park Boulevard into this park. The bridge spanned Indian Gulch, transporting visitors to the park's pavilion, where events like dances and conventions and camp meetings were held. Mark Twain is among the notables known to have made this trip. And I will share photos of this with you on my Substack. In the early 20th century, as Oakland expanded, the fate of areas like ours hung in the balance. Around 1914, under Mayor Frank Mott's administration, there was a movement to preserve this neighborhood as a public park, envisioning it as part of a green belt connecting Lake Merritt with other natural spaces. However, the plan faced financial hurdles, and despite efforts, the land was eventually developed into residential neighborhoods. Developers transformed this landscape, leading to the removal of many ancient oaks to make way for homes and roads. The street that winds through the neighborhood today was built right over the creek, though in places where the natural elevation kept the creek above the level of the road and culverts, it still appears behind some people's houses. a visible reminder of the water that once carved out this entire landscape. Today, while this neighborhood and people like me benefits from this development, it's a stark contrast to the verdant forests that once stood here. Yet, remnants of the past persist. Some original oaks remain, not many, but some, and thanks to industrious squirrels, new saplings continue to emerge, and I'll share more about that in another episode. One such ancient oak stood on the property we now own. It was massive, 300, 400, 500 years old. It was over 6 feet in circumference. Oaks in general are considered keystone species across much of the Northern Hemisphere, and most regions in Europe and North America have their own indigenous oaks, each supporting a wide web of life. And here in California, it's the coast live oaks that play that role, trees on which ecosystems depend, entire ecosystems. A single oak can support hundreds of species of caterpillars, which in turn feed countless birds. Deer browse their leaves and acorns. Birds nest in their limbs. Squirrels, woodpeckers, insects all rely on them. These trees are not just part of the landscape. They are the landscape. And this oak would have done all of that and more. It stood on the front hillside of this property, rooted deep into the slope, rising above the canyon, its branches stretching high and wide. It was so tall and so full, I was told you couldn't see the house from the street, and you couldn't see the street from the house, which makes sense considering where this house sits. Our home, which we named Little Montali, is perched about 100 feet above street level, up on the hillside, overlooking the neighborhood below. And it's part of what makes this house so special. When the area was developed in the early 1900s, most homes were built right along the road for practical reasons. The creek, now mostly buried, ran through what is essentially a canyon with steep hills on either side. So building at street level meant easier access and fewer costs, even if it still required carving into the hillsides and reinforcing them with retaining walls to prevent erosion and mudslides. But at some point, someone made a different choice. Instead of looking down, they looked up and decided to build a house all the way at the top of the hill, 100 feet up. And that decision makes this house unlike any other around it. I don't know who that person was. I wish I could thank them. I wish I knew who they were. But thanks to them, we sit above the rooftops looking out over our canyon, our little village, we call it, and the canopy of trees that thread between the homes. Not all of them are oaks, a lot of other trees besides oaks now, but it is incredibly magical. And it's clear that whoever built this house cared about these trees, though they certainly would have cut thousands down to develop this into a neighborhood. But here, the original design seems to have been made with the trees in mind. Several oak trees still grow within a foot of our house, close enough to make it impossible to have a screen door properly open outside our bedroom, for instance. It's quite literally almost against the house and safe. But the most majestic of them all was the one that stood at the edge of the front hillside of Little Montali. And as I said, its limbs stretched up and outward, and it stretched westward toward the sun and the neighboring house. Like many coast live oaks, if you've ever seen them, on these hillsides especially, it wasn't straight or symmetrical. These trees grow in response to wind and slope and sun and space. They twist, they lean, they arch, often looking as they're defying gravity, and that's part of their strength. This one had clearly adapted over centuries to the hillside, anchoring itself deeply and growing wide rather than just tall, forming a sculptural, sprawling canopy. And the couple who lived in the house next door loved that tree. For decades, they paid to have it cabled and pruned and maintained. They made sure it stayed strong and healthy and safe, even as its massive limbs, towered over their house. But when the couple decided to sell, the prospective buyers said that they wouldn't go through with the purchase unless the tree on this property, the neighboring property, was cut down. Not even cut back or pruned, but removed entirely. Even though the oak wasn't on the property they were about to purchase, the buyers made its removal a condition of the sale, and somehow they got it. The woman who owned our house at the time, Little Montali wouldn't have been called that, but the woman who owned the house that we live in now at that time must have been heartbroken. But in the end, she had to concede. Most likely they argued it was a hazard, a liability. And it's especially sad because oak trees are protected technically in Oakland. It's illegal to cut them down, but I've since learned that protection doesn't always mean preservation. If a developer or anyone wants to cut down an oak tree, they can. Even if it's protected, even if it's healthy, they just have to make a case and pay for a permit. That's what it takes. And so a permit was obtained, a professional tree crew was hired, the city closed off the road, and over the course of 2 days, the tree was dismantled, dismembered, and removed piece by piece, limb by limb, branch by branch. Gone. I heard that the whole thing cost $10,000. That's what it costs to eliminate a 500-year-old tree. And that was in 2011. We found this house in early 2012. We weren't looking to move. We'd been in our old house for 8 years, had no plans to leave. But I saw the listing. I've always loved browsing Redfin for fun. I still do. And it caught my eye. The description said, "It's worth the hike." And I was intrigued. And I asked David if we could go to the open house. He agreed. I hadn't asked him to go look at an open house for 8 years. And he was intrigued because I was intrigued. And so we came. The house itself had great bones, as they say, beautiful original windows. It had been built in 1926. The interior was dated, the decor mostly, but nothing that couldn't be fixed. But what we both loved was the setting, the hill it sat on, the trees that surrounded it, the privacy, the sense of being tucked away and high up in the trees. As soon as we pulled up and looked up, I knew I wanted to be here. I needed to be here. It was my sanctuary, and it was meant to be. We were the only ones who made an offer, and we moved in April 2012, 13 years ago, as I record this. And I have loved this house every day, every single moment ever since. We have renovated it from top to bottom. Every time we uncovered one thing, something else had to be fixed. We have renovated it inside and out. It's been a lot of work and a lot of resources, but we love every inch of this space, especially the land around it. By the time we moved in, all that was left of that oak tree was the giant stump, scorched, cracked, and surrounded by English ivy, a ghost of what had been. The only silver lining was, without the shade of that massive tree, the ivy, a very successful, very invasive species, eventually dried out and died off. Still, the absence of the oak was glaring. Every time I looked out the front window or walked past it, coming or going from the house, I saw its absence, and I had never seen it here in its full glory. Just the massive stump remained, surrounded by dying ivy, like a wound on the landscape. It was a ghost of something whose life had been cut short before its time. And I felt it. Eventually, we got to know the new neighbors, the ones who demanded the tree's removal before they even owned the house next door. I am grateful that we were not the ones living in this house, because that would have been a fight. and I don't know what would have happened. But one day I asked the man why he did it. I didn't want to know, but he told me flatly that it was about resale value, not current danger, not worry about the limbs on the roof, just future inconvenience, because one day, maybe, it might make selling their house harder. Over time, I realized he didn't seem to like trees at all. He talked about cutting down the liquid ambers in front of their house as well, not because they were non-native, they are non-native, or because the roots were damaging the sidewalk, they are still, but because he didn't like raking leaves. They never did cut those trees down, thank goodness, because we get to see the leaves of the liquid ambers from our house. Non-native though they are, the leaves are incredible. Liquid ambers are East Coast trees. They turn this gorgeous orange and red in the fall and green in the summer. And we are very grateful to enjoy them from where we sit. We probably enjoyed them more than they did because of the position of our house. But they didn't cut those trees down because about 5 years after they moved in, they sold the house and moved on. They weren't here to put down roots. They were just passing through. But in that short time, they made a decision that left a permanent mark. That oak was gone. But the person who bought that house from them, he would have had no problem with that oak. When I told him the story, he was gutted knowing that that tree was cut down and that he was the owner who came next, and he never would have had a problem with it. He loves trees. In fact, he might love trees a little too much. Those liquid amber leaves linger on the sidewalk just a bit longer than they should. It's a slipping hazard once they fall. And I've asked him, and he says, I just love the leaves so much. I don't like to rake them. I can't hold it against him. His motto seems to be, if it's green, it's good. Yes, but we'll come back to him and our story together. Meanwhile, we settled into Little Montali, named, by the way, after Country House Montali in Umbria, Italy, a beautiful hilltop retreat we fell in love with on our first trip to Italy many, many years ago. And we tackled all the indoor renovations and garden projects. We renovated the house from top to bottom, as I said, and slowly, lovingly began landscaping the property, maintaining what had been here before, improving where we could, and learning each section of the land, one area at a time. There are a lot of sections, but that front upper hillside, the one where the oak tree once stood, remained mostly untouched. It wasn't a high priority. There's a massive coast redwood there as well, which is impressive in its own right, and gave that area at least some structure and shade. That slope is steep, which made it less inviting to work on, especially with so many other areas demanding attention. And then something began to happen. The oak began to come back. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a few green shoots pushing up from the stump, tentative and small. And I thought that would be it. Then came more. Then it started looking like a shrub. Then came multiple limbs rising and reaching, and season after season, it kept going and growing and leafing out. Today, it's a tree again. A real one. It's a proper tree. Will it ever be as grand and large as it was? I don't know. I won't be here to find out. But it is growing, and it is tall enough that it will soon fill our view out the front window, replacing the first thing we see now, which is our lovely neighbor's roof. Nothing wrong with his roof, but I would much rather see the tree. And it's already doing what oak trees do. The deer nibble at its leaves. The bush tits flit and forage through its branches. Life is gathering all around it again, a whole ecosystem slowly, steadily returning. And every time I look at it, I'm reminded of how resilient nature is. Life persists, wounds heal, nature rebounds, and we are part of nature. I'm reminded also that our choices matter, that individuals have so much power for good or ill. As I always say, we don't get to decide whether we can make a difference. We get to decide only if the difference we inevitably make is negative or positive. That oak was cut down because someone prioritized resale value over the life this tree supported. Now, that's not how they would have framed it, but that was the result. And now it's coming back because someone else, us, chose to step back, to leave it alone, to let it reclaim its place. And what's required for that is also time and trust, trusting that what is broken can and will and does heal, given the time to do so, and knowing when to intervene and when to let go. Being stewards, being caretakers requires doing and not doing. Not doing, letting it be, not hindering it, creating space for it, not hindering that space, and intervening when necessary on that hillside all around that once massive, now resurging oak are dozens of other oak saplings. Many likely came from acorns dispersed by squirrels and scrub jays and deer and other animals who carried them and cached them in the soil. And most of them are technically on our tree-loving neighbor's side of the hillside, but with his blessing, I'm helping them. I'm championing their survival. I'm actively aiding in their survival. Most of them were being choked and covered by non-native invasive species like English ivy and milk thistle and poison hemlock and panic veldgrass. And I have spent hours and hours on the steep hillside freeing the oaks and giving them space and air and light so they will thrive like their oak brethren. Healing is possible. Renewal is possible, but only when we create the conditions that allow it. That means time, that means space, that means trust, and sometimes that means intervention and knowing when to intervene and when not to intervene. Nature, like you, like me, is resilient. And that's the theme of today's episode: resilience and renewal and rootedness and return. And that's where I find myself right now. Despite what's going on in the world, I feel the most peaceful I have felt maybe forever, at least in a very long time. I feel grounded. I feel clear. I feel balanced. Equilibrium is the word that keeps coming to mind. I have clarity. And it's not just the clarity I talked about in that last episode where I talked about moving over to Substack. That is a big part of it because I feel like I have a place for my writing. And that story I just told you is over on Substack, so you can read it and hopefully enjoy it and be inspired by it and share it and hopefully read it again. It's because of that clarity, sure. It's because my new book is out, A Year of Compassion. That's part of it. Though birthing a book is incredibly anxiety producing, and there have been some bumps along the way in this release. A lot of people pre-ordered and they've been told their books are delayed, and it's fine. It will all work out. And I'm super excited that people are ordering from local bookstores and from my local bookstore, from Mrs. Dalloway's. Again, you can find all of that at joyfulvegan.com. You can find it at Substack. You can find it under my books at Substack. And yet, with all of the stress and the chaos, I feel surprisingly calm. I'm really proud of this book. And I think part of it is that I'm getting to talk about all these solutions, the tools and inspiration people need to live compassionately and sustainably. But I say this aware that millions of people are feeling anxious and disempowered and frustrated and angry and scared and angry and sad and outraged and sad and all the things. And I'm really grateful that right now I'm not there. I have been there. And I'm aware also that it's almost unpopular to say that I'm feeling okay, that I'm feeling resilient, that I'm feeling strong, that I have equilibrium, because some people will hear that and infer that that means I'm not engaged in the world, that I'm not paying attention. Because if you knew and were paying attention to everything going on in the world, how could you possibly feel good? But as I have said, related to animal advocacy, and you can apply this to anything you care about, the animals don't need us to feel as distressed as they are. They need us to transcend our distress so that we can end theirs. We really need to stop conflating enragement with engagement. Feeling constantly enraged and outraged is not a sustainable measure of how much you care. It's a recipe for and a sign of burnout and fatigue and distress. But somewhere along the way, we absorbed this idea that if you're not visibly upset all the time, you must be apathetic. And I just don't agree with that. I just don't think that's true. Caring deeply doesn't require you to stay in a perpetual state of distress. In fact, cultivating joy and clarity and groundedness is what makes sustained, meaningful action possible. Feeling good doesn't mean you're tuning out. It means you're tuning in to what actually helps, to what is actually effective, to what you can actually control, to what you can proactively solve. The problem is we give away our power and our agency and our peace of mind to things we have no control over. Again and again and again. Our job, our work is to know what those things are. Where do I end and where does the rest of the world begin? What power do I have to affect change? What things can I actually change? What things can I not change? What things can I actively try to change, but I'll see the results of never, or I'll see the results of maybe, or I'll see the results of immediately. Just our work is to be discerning and patient. There's a line in the Tao, which is, do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? I love that because that's part of the challenge as well. We want to see results right away, but that's not always possible. That's not always practical. That oak tree did not rebound in a day. And if I measured my efficacy or my mental wellness by whether or not that tree was going to rebound, I would have been a puddle a long time ago. It just took time. It took time. It took patience and it took trust. We have to trust that what we do now is laying down roots for the future with patience and care and space. Those roots deepen and grow stronger. And part of our job is also to remove the muck so that what needs to grow can grow and thrive and flourish, just like me removing all that muck around those oak saplings. But we need to let go of instant gratification. We need to keep sowing our seeds. We need to keep removing the muck and trust that those seeds will take hold. Some of them won't, but that's how it works. That's what it looks like. That doesn't mean we stop clearing the muck and stop planting seeds. It means we trust and let go and know that some will survive and some won't. So I'm saying this as if it's the easiest thing in the world to do. It's not. It takes practice and cultivation. And I've been talking about the practice and the cultivation for years and years. And I've been practicing and cultivating the practices that guide my life, the philosophies that guide my life, namely Stoicism and Taoism. They're universal principles of letting go, of knowing what we can control, of knowing that whatever happens in the world is not mine. What's mine is how I respond to them. These are universal principles. So whatever philosophies guide your life, you will find those philosophies or whatever it is that guides you and inspires you. And I think, I don't know, perhaps after years of practicing this, I don't want to say, now that I'm older and this comes with age. It doesn't. It's not osmosis. It's not automatic. I have been working on the things that challenge me. And I think right now, at least, they're working, they're paying off because of that peace of mind that I mentioned, the clarity, the resilience, this feeling of equanimity, this feeling of groundedness and rootedness. The image that comes to mind is very much a tree who has strong roots and who may blow and bluster in strong winds, but remains rooted. It also reminds me of one of my favorite passages from the Tao Te Ching, from chapter 76. It goes, men are soft and supple, dead they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant, dead they are brittle and dry. Thus who is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. The hard and stiff will be broken. The soft and supple will prevail. I actually have a printed version of that sitting on my desk at all times to see that at all times, because I have to remind myself of it all the time, because it's something I've been practicing for years, being flexible rather than rigid, supple rather than stiff, because it doesn't come easy to me. So I don't say any of this without full awareness that this is a journey we're all on. And I happen to be in a place in my journey that might be different than where you are in your journey, where I'm feeling supple rather than stiff and flexible rather than rigid. And it feels really good. I would rather be a disciple of life rather than death. Will I always feel this way? Probably no, because this is a journey. And I will keep practicing and implementing these philosophies and principles. But of course, I'm going to have times where I don't feel as resilient. But I am going to keep taking the precautions and keep practicing what I know is working so that I have more days than not when I feel this way, and so that I can recover more quickly when I don't. So I'm telling you this because I've been there. I know what it's like to feel fragile. I know what it's like to feel anxiety and anger and fear and sadness. And I've worked really hard, not just at avoiding pain. I have worked on the resilience so that I can go toward the pain, as my husband says, go toward the pain and not be broken by it. That's the real difference. Because I've learned that I can go toward that pain. I can look at the boogeyman, not stare, but look, and not give it the same power, not give it the same weight I used to. Why? Not just because I'm older, not just because I'm aging. This is what comes with age. No. This comes because of the practice I've been putting in and the time I've been putting in. And because I've decided not to hand over my power, not to give oxygen to anything I don't want to see grow and live and thrive and flourish. We put so much energy, so much attention, even fear and outrage going into things that we say we don't want to thrive and flourish and grow, but we wonder why they thrive and flourish because we give them oxygen. Oxygen gives them life, and I refuse to breathe the life into the things I do not want to flourish. So the idea that we should feel bad, or that someone would infer that I don't care, or I'm not paying attention because other people are suffering, it's almost like survivor's guilt, right? That I'm supposed to feel bad because other people feel bad, or because things are going wrong in the world. I don't agree that that is the best thing for me and for any of us, because when I am in a fragile, anxious, outraged state, and I've been there, when I am no good to anyone. I'm no good to myself. I'm no good to my loved ones. I'm no good to the people who need me, who are in distress. I'm no good to the animals who need me, who are in distress, those who are. When I am truly resilient and strong, I can be there for the people who are less resilient and strong, for the animals who don't have the voice and they don't have the agency to advocate for themselves, right? So what I'm saying is that I feel strong and capable and resilient. And as such, I can be here for you. I can be here for them. I can be here for the people I care about. I can be here for the animals. So in addition to the principles I've talked about, and I keep kind of skating over them. Maybe you're thinking, how have you done this? How have you gotten here? Give me some concrete examples. Certainly, you can go back and listen to some of the episodes I've talked about, where I've talked about resilience, how I live a meaningful life, gratitude, journaling, love and kindness, meditation. All those things have led up to this as well. But there are a few more. So I will tell you what I'm doing. And this will lead us to a series of emails that I hope will inspire you and empower you. And I'll get to that in a moment. First, I want to thank today's sponsor. That's Plain Products. You know Plain Products. They make refillable, zero waste hair and body care products designed with sustainability in mind. All of the products come in bottles, aluminum bottles, that you send back when they're empty. They clean them, they refill them, they reuse them. No single-use plastic, no waste, just a closed loop system that supports you and your body and your hair and the planet. I use their shampoo. I love their purple shampoo every day. I use their conditioner every day. I'll be honest, I use their shampoo probably every other day. I don't wash my hair every single day. But every time I do shower, I use the conditioner because I have hair that requires moisturizing. My favorite product right now is their cherry almond deep conditioner. It smells like heaven and it smells for hours. I love it. I also use their body lotion and their hair repair. I love everything they make, and I just love their business model and their commitment to sustainability and quality. So for you, you can get 20% off with the link at joyfulvegan.com right on the homepage. Right on the homepage. You can use the code COMPASSION and you get 20% off. It used to be 15% off. Now it's 20. So every time you order, use that link, use that code COMPASSION and get 20% off. Okay. Why and how am I feeling resilient and rooted and renewed? What am I doing? What am I doing? Number one, for starters, I have been off the news for 9 months now. I think closer to 9 months. I peaked during the election, but I quickly returned to my news fast. And honestly, I think in addition to the practices I mentioned, the journaling, the gratitude, the love and kindness, meditation, there is no doubt in my mind that stepping away from the constant news cycle is one of the main reasons I feel in control, at peace, empowered, effective, focused on what I can control. Speaking of what I can control, the second thing that has given me a sense of calm and purpose and joy is focusing on what's right in front of me, on what I can control, on what has the most impact, on where I can have the most effect, where I can be part of the solutions. Now, of course, my work is a huge part of this, especially with a year of compassion just having come out. It's all about solutions, especially with the new and growing audience over at Substack and all of the articles I'm writing over there and the connections with subscribers. All of that is true. That is my work. That is where I spend hours and hours and hours a day. But I also have a personal life, and focusing on those relationships is really important to me. Strengthening those relationships, certainly my relationship with my husband, with my friends, with my neighbors, with my sister, who I was estranged from for 30 years, and we are finding our way back to each other, and I'm finding my way back to her and her family. She and one of her sons is coming out in May to visit for the first time ever. That's mind-blowing. And that takes my time and energy. I have a 93-year-old father I help out with. So honing my relationships is in my control. It's in my control. And I can see the effect of the time and energy I put into them. Number 3, honing my own personal growth and wellness. That's something I can control. I've 10x'd my strength training, which has been super fun. I can see results. So again, what can I do? What can I control? Can I see results? In this case, yeah. I'll talk more about that when I talk about protein and menopause and all those things. But that's been super fun. And tending to my own wellness is also about my mental and emotional wellness, all the things, right? It includes the journaling and the love and kindness, but it also includes, I read a lot. I learn, I listen to podcasts, I take courses. So mental, emotional, physical, all that is part of what I can control. And that has definitely led me to where I am. I'm really focused on my wellness, my physical wellness, my emotional and mental wellness. Number 4 is, number 4 and 5 is the local and the hyper local. So I've talked for decades about how much power we have at the local level in our cities, in our towns, in our states, but certainly in our cities and towns. And that's why we founded the East Bay Animal Pack back in 2016. It was the right thing to do at the time. A lot of us felt gutted after the 2016 election, and we came together and we said, what can we do here right now for animals right here, regardless of what's happening at the federal level? What can we do right now, right here? And so we founded the pack and we focused locally. And just last week, we announced our endorsements for animal-friendly candidates for the special election coming up next month or this month here in Oakland. We recalled our mayor, which triggered a special election for both the mayor and for the district I live in. And I'm really proud to have been part of a group that compels candidates to take animal issues seriously. And I'm stepping down now as a board member, but I feel really good about everything we've accomplished and all that the East Bay Animal Pack will continue to accomplish. It will remain. But one of the reasons I'm stepping down is because I want to focus on community solutions rather than political solutions. Another way to say that is I want to focus on solutions that are even more local than my city. And that's my community. And even more hyper local than that, it's my neighborhood. And even more hyper local than that, it's my backyard. And that's number 5. You can't get more local than where your feet are at. You can't be more impactful than creating the world you want right on the land you live on. The space we're stewards of, our homes, our gardens, our yards, our neighborhoods as well. And that's why I'm excited to tell you the story of rewilding and where I am at right now in my own little world, my own little hillside, my own little Montali. And working with neighbors like my neighbor who is the tree lover, who is letting me help him and cross the boundary, the property line, right? Because nature doesn't see property lines. So I have cleaned up so much of our hillside in the front, especially. A lot of the back and the sides have been cultivated. So most of the weeds were in the front. And if you go look at the Substack article of the story I shared with you, you will see that stump from that hill, on the hillside. You'll see it. You'll see the deer kind of circling around it, wondering where the heck the tree is. And you'll see all the dead ivy. That is not what it looks like today. You can see the tree today, and you can see a bit of a, kind of mulch and grasses there. But I can do all that cleaning up and get rid of all the non-native invasives. But our neighbor's hillside, it's the same hillside. And so there were all these weeds and the same weeds that are just going to, seed and blow back into my land. So, this is a multi-year project. This is a project for the rest of my life. But I can't wait to share the stories with you of this is not just about what I'm doing on my own little land. It's right, the impact I'm having with my neighbor and neighbors. And I hope to expand that. So that's the message I want to bring to you. Knowing that things are out of control, like government mandates, federal government mandates to cut down millions of trees on public lands. Elections have consequences. That's not in my control. I voted and it didn't go my way. Elections have consequences. But what is in my control and what's in your control is what I can do. Well, what's in my control is what I can do on my land. What's in your control is what you could do on your land. And that's really empowering and that's really exciting. Now, I have been a wildlife advocate for decades. I've already created a wildlife habitat. I'm supporting the animals here. I'm supporting the trees all around this home for years. We've been here 13 years, and I have been building this as a wildlife sanctuary. But I have had a complete shift in my understanding of my role, and I'm really excited to share that with you, this revelation around rewilding. I'm just planting some seeds here, no pun intended, because I really, really can't wait to share with you how we can even more positively impact the animals all around us in ways that we can see and measure. So in the next episode and in episodes that follow and over on Substack, I will be sharing what rewilding means, why I've chosen that word, what inspired this shift for me, how this personal awakening unfolded, how there's parallels between becoming vegan and having this shift now, just like I did when I became zero waste. I'll talk about the moments and the conversations and the books and even the weeds that opened my eyes. And I'll talk about the practical resources you need to get started in your own space, whether you're working in a yard or a balcony or a school garden or your own garden or a single pot on a windowsill. I'm going to give you everything you need to begin. So I'll be sharing that with you in the next episode called Backyard Activism, how you can use your own small space to take part in something so much bigger than yourself. You don't need permission. You don't need a grant. You don't need acres of land. You just need the will and the desire and the inspiration to start. And my hope is that that little story today and the episodes and articles to come will inspire you to consider your own form of backyard activism and remind you that even in the face of large-scale systems and decisions out of our control, we individuals hold incredible power to shape the world around us and to create the conditions for resilience and healing and flourishing for ourselves, for humankind, for animal kind, and for the ecosystems we all depend on. So stay tuned. This is just the beginning. Make sure you're following Food for Thought. And because of the nature of the written medium versus the audio medium, do subscribe to my Substack. I have been and will continue to share the details of this journey. There's already some articles over there. And yes, I could see this becoming my next book. I'll be sharing practical inspiration and tips and resources and fails and successes and everything that you need to claim or reclaim the power you have to make a positive difference wherever you are, however much space you have. So don't forget to go over to joyfulvegan.com, get your link and discount code for 20% off of all of your present and future orders of plain products and for the animals. This is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening.